Hey guys, so it's been a couple of days since I made a video. I've been learning as I go. Sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna make more and save them, but then there's a little research that I've been teaching myself. It's like the way that technology works nowadays is just so frustrating because there's so many different opinions on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how you should upload something, how long it should be. That I finally was just like, I'm just gonna do it the way that I do it. And that's what life's about, is like learning as we go and not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect timing, just doing it. So, one thing I did say that I was going to be switching a lot of stuff around. I added some playlists and I'm going to be adding more songs to it and more videos. Um, But one thing was the visuals behind me. I had had this over the TV on the other side, on the opposite wall, so I could see it all the time. And then I said, well, if I'm going to be sitting here, maybe put it behind me. And then some people might need visuals. Like I needed a lot of times to say, I'm trying to express how I'm thinking or feeling. Maybe you don't see it, so I'll show. But so that's part of that. And it goes along with the theme that I said. My channel I named Sea Witch to Phoenix. And that was because a lot of times I'd feel like the octopus trying to get out in order to become the phoenix. So I had gotten this piece of metal. It's weird like pointing and seeing it there, but with my brother, we had been shopping for stuff for him for his place, went thrifting, and that reminded me of that, I guess, simile, analogy, metaphor that I had used in a relationship that I had about a lot of times I feel like the octopus underneath the sea, and they say that's where our emotions lie, is in water. And that goes into me studying astrology. And I would say, like, I feel like I'm drowning all the time. And then I would kind of feel like an octopus. And I'm going to try to figure out all the things, all the puzzles and the whys, and put the pieces together and recognize the patterns and all of that, and try to get out of it. And then I feel like I would, try to climb out of the ocean to become that phoenix rising up there, like that metal piece. I got all of these four individually. That one has a woman inside of it, and I would say I want to be that phoenix rising. A lot of times I'd feel like I'm burning down to the ground and then rise again. But then I'd feel like my wings get clipped and I'd fall back into the ocean. And for the longest time, I had this fear of drowning all the time. Like I'm still very uneasy going across bridges. That's just because of a nightmare I'd had ever since I was little, like flying off the side of a bridge and drowning in a car. And I'm sure that has to do with my emotions, feeling like my emotions were drowning me. But I had used the trying to relate to somebody about like, hey, we're kind of like octopus. We recognize patterns. We recognize this, but octopus are really good at doing that and then of camouflaging themselves. So like sometimes you think I'm a lionfish, but I'm not. I'm an octopus. Like disguised as a lionfish because I'm afraid. Because that's what they do. A lot of times when they camouflage, it could be for predatory reasons, but it also could be because they feel like prey. And a lot of my times it'd be like, I feel like I'm being attacked, so let me act tough. That's how I was taught. And then I'd be like, you think I'm a lionfish, but I'm not. I'm an octopus. Do you feel like a lionfish? Or are you an octopus acting like a lionfish? Because, lionfish are pretty to look at, but people think they're dangerous. Stay away from them. So I had gotten those two, and then I remembered I had that metal thing up there with the phoenix and thought, that's a good representation a lot of times of our emotions trap us. And then it's our our jobs to try to get out of that drowning feeling in order to rise again, to be better versions of ourselves. Like they say, comparisons are not a good thing unless you're comparing this new version of you with the past, that if you're comparing the past in order to learn, they just say be better than you were yesterday. That's all we can ever do is try to improve ourselves. And that brought me into thinking about self-sacrifice and self-rejection versus rejection from others and sacrifice from others. And for me, in dealing with a lot of things that I've dealt with, I always had this feeling of rejection, like people are going to reject me. And why would I feel that way? Because I've had so many people reject me. I've had, I would tell people like, this is the way that I am. And then I don't know if they didn't believe me or didn't believe themselves, but I would be like, I'm the person who's going to call BS on stuff. I used to be quiet. I used to be really quiet because I was raised to be quiet, to be silenced. And then I started speaking up. And I had to work on the way that I speak, how I come across to people, who I can give benefits of the doubt to and who I can't. Because I am the first person who will say, well, maybe that person was having a bad day. Well, maybe that person, like, that's the way they express themselves. Maybe that has nothing to do with you, with other people. And then taking so much stuff personally. And so I think, having that feeling of being afraid of being rejected would cause me to self-sacrifice to where it would be, people ask me, and I've made videos about this before, people would ask me, well, what's the problem? What's going on? I'm like, okay, I'm pretty observant. The problem is this and this and this. The problem is communication, so let's do something about that. Let's talk more. The problem is no planning, so let's plan more. The problem is, the issue, not a person. But then whenever I would speak up, people would say, oh, no, you're the problem. We're going to talk about the way you reacted, something. So I got into this, I don't know if you'd call it a pattern, a cycle of where over the past few years, it was like certain people labeled me a certain way. And especially when it goes down to your integrity, there's something about somebody just, I don't know if it's rejecting your integrity, attacking your integrity, that does something to you, but it hits at the core. And I don't think I've ever been that selfish person that's never purposely went out of my way to try to not help someone. Because I'm the person who, if I've had friends that need help, I would say, I know what it's like last minute when you have to move and there's no help, so I'm going to show up. A lot of mine would be like, I know how that feels, and I don't want people to feel that way. So I'm going to try to do everything I can so that they don't feel that negative feeling. But a lot of times it came to, in order for somebody to feel good about themselves, I felt like I had to be small. Because I had relationships where, I would tell people, please don't call me honey, baby, sweetie. Because the person that I'm in a relationship with is the only one who does that. Like, I'm not everybody's baby, honey, whatever. And then people would say, this is just the way that I am. And I have always said, like, people will do things without knowing if they're offensive to somebody else. But once you know, you're no longer ignorant. Once you know something you're doing is hurting somebody and you continue to do it, then that becomes the issue of where, do you care enough to not do the thing that's hurting somebody else? And I'd had people in my life where I would tell them, listen, I've had people ignore me for long periods of time and act like I don't exist within my own family, because I'm the truth teller, because I'm the one who's going to stand up and say this is not right. So that hurt me deeply. So could you not do that? And then they would do it. And it becomes this form of control where I would say, that's what I got before. When you use silence as a weapon, when you use choosing to not communicate, choosing to not answer, choosing to not do, you keep yourself in negative. And my thing would be constantly adjusting within my work. It would be, okay, we see you're struggling. We need you to type that up. What's the issues? I'd type up stuff. Okay, well, we need you to email whoever. Okay, I did that. Well, we need you to do these steps first. I would do that. The end result would always be like, nothing is changing. Nothing is improving. This is not working. Could I get some help? And it became towards the end, and I know it was because of personal relationships too, but it became to where I was like, it does not matter what I say or how I say it. They're not going to get me any help. Why? Because it's not affecting them in a negative way. It was affecting me in a negative way because of the job I did. I was helping the homeless population. My job was to connect people with resources. And I would say, can I get business cards, with my name on it to hand to people so that when you tell me to act like a professional, they think that I'm a professional because you guys have put it on there. Because if a resource hands me their business card, I want to be able to hand a business card back to them. Not like write my name on an appointment card. That looks unprofessional. And then it'd be like, what's the big deal? Why is it a problem? Well, because they're not the ones out there handing out appointment cards instead of business cards. It's not affecting them. I would say, can I get some resources? Can I get some funding? And it would be, well, check with everybody else. Check all their resources. Check it. And I would be like, why? We're supposed to have some here. So where is it? So that I don't have to spend time chasing down every other resource to get something that we should have. And it just became to where it did not matter how I said things. It did not matter what I did. That it just became, you're the problem. Could you stop complaining? Could you stop acting like something's wrong when I'm like, something's clearly wrong here. We need avenues to help our homeless population because it's different for them. They're going through things as we're talking. Not one thing happened to them and they're waiting. They're currently in it still. And I would use that with my clients where I would say, it's okay that you don't remember everything right now. You're experiencing trauma. You're going through trauma. Let's write stuff down. Maybe get a planner. It's okay if your thoughts are all over the place because you're experiencing trauma. The brain gets in this survival mode where it's fight, flight, or freeze. And it can't do critical thinking. It can't do all of the things that you could if you felt safe, if you felt secure, if you had your basic needs met. And so a lot of mine was looking within myself, improving myself over the past couple years of like how I approach things, how I talk, who I talk to, and this was in interpersonal relationships too, with coworkers or with friends or with the romantic partner I had, where I would say, I'm asking for help or I'm asking for this. What is the problem? No communication? Okay, well, I'm trying to talk. And then be labeled as, it's like you're attacking me. I'd be like, okay, I'm just saying that my feelings got hurt. And then be told, well, it's the way that you're saying it. It's the volume. So I'd adjust my volume. And now it's the tone. So I'd adjust my tone. Now it's the words. So I'd adjust my words. And it didn't matter what I did. It seemed like, no, actually, you're the problem. Could you just not say anything? To where I realized, like, so in the majority of my day, or in the majority of what's going on, people would rather me just be quiet and not complain about the things that are affecting me in negative ways. Because I'm a solution person. I've always said I'm like a MacGyver. That's where I'd have stuff in common with the homeless population too, is that a lot of people are like MacGyvers. When you have to figure things out because you don't have the tools or you don't have the resources, um you become very, I don't know what the industrious, where if I don't have a hammer, I'm gonna look for what around me can I use as a hammer to hang something up. If I don't have some sort of resource, then I'm looking for something else. If I don't have whatever tool that I need at the time, I'm going to look for, like, what could I use as that tool to figure out something? And I would have people that would tell me, like, you're so smart. I would have never thought about that. And I would say, yeah, well, that's because I've spent the majority of my life just trying to do with whatever I got at the time because I was raised to not quit and not give up. But then later on, when it became about them, because, they loved that because it was beneficial to them. Like, you're so smart that you figured that out. You're so smart that you thought of that. I'd never thought about that. But then when it came to where it was about them, I would get um, you just think you're smarter because you went to college. You know, you just think you're right all the time. And I'd be like, no, like, so that's a bad thing that I went to school? Like, the majority of stuff that I learned was not from college. College just gave me a lot of words, a lot of, I guess, descriptors of stuff where I'd say, yeah, that's like somebody that I know, or, oh, that's what that thing was called. I didn't know that before. But the majority of stuff that I learned, it was through experience, not through education. And so then it became a bad thing, where it was like, does it hurt you being right all the time? I'm like, no. Like, it hurts me when people don't believe me. When I'm like, well, based on this and this and this is probably what's going to happen. And then it would happen, and then people would get upset. And then I would say, no, obviously it hurts you that I'm right. Because you think if I'm right, you're wrong. You make it about you, not me. So then it becomes a negative that I'm right. It becomes a negative that I'm intelligent. That's when a lot of people do become competitive. They start comparing themselves to the other person. And it would be, well, you're better at that than I am. Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm a quick learner, or maybe I have more experience in something. And I'd be like, so that's a bad thing? Because it's been a good thing for me. I'm able to adapt pretty fast. I'm able to learn pretty fast. If I can see it a couple times, if I can do it a couple times, then I'm going to try to perfect it. And I've had to let go of that perfection, trying to be perfect for myself, giving myself a break. But then it would be like, well, then nobody wants to take me anywhere. Like, sorry, I wanted that game because you took it against you. So now you don't want me to go play a game with you. So now it's bad that I can play a game good. Where I would just, the more and more, I don't know if it's that when we get older, we just start calling people out on their BS. I would say I've been doing that a lot in my life. Some of it I hadn't called myself out on, but a lot of times I would just be stuck in this, well, I feel like I have to sacrifice. Do I have to sacrifice myself and just never complain? Well, the problem is, like with my work, it was like the problem is you don't want to listen to me to keep telling you how this is not working with this population. This is affecting not only them in a negative way because they can't get help in a timely manner, but this is affecting me in a negative way because I need some help out here. I need some funding. I need some resources. I need some business cards. Like, I'm not asking for a whole lot, but I'm asking for help. And that was always an issue with me, is like not asking people for help. Because it seemed like the way I was raised is that you should be self-sufficient. You should be able to take care of yourself, not ever rely on anybody else. You don't wait for other people to come and help you, or you don't ask them. You should be able to know this. But in the past several years, I've asked and asked so many times where I'd be like, I don't need help with the thing I already know how to do. What I need help with is the thing I don't know how to do. I don't need help in whatever issue you thought you heard. I need help with the thing that I'm saying, and it just became this box of, so you want me to sacrifice myself. You'd rather me just not complain. You'd rather me just act like everything's okay, like nothing's affecting me in a negative way. Because if it is, then you take it against you instead of me advocating for me. And I had started putting up boundaries with work, with people, even with some clients where I would be like, here are my boundaries. I can help you with this and this, but not with this. I can kind of point out or guide, but I'm not going to do the work for you. I'm not going to take the responsibility of your things, because if I did that, then if things go wrong, you blame me. And if oh gosh. It's like the cat moved and I was like, what the heck? That happens a lot. We lose our train of thought. Especially sometimes if I just get really deep into it, that I'm like, I start thinking about like, am I repeating myself? Anyway, so many times I'd stop the video and be like, oh, I ruined it. Let me start over. But one thing that I've learned is you can't stop. You have to keep going. You have to keep forgiving yourself and owning it. And so for years, I think a lot of us struggle with, those of us who have felt not seen and not heard, struggle with self-rejection and self-sacrifice. And one thing I've learned is if you reject yourself and act like, no, you never did anything wrong, then you end up rejecting everybody else. It's like, you get that mentality of, I do nothing wrong, it's all you. And for years, I've been the person to admit, yeah, I'll admit my faults. I know, people used to say, you talk a lot, as if it was a bad thing. And I would be like, yeah, I do. I started owning it. Like, I talk a lot. You know why? Because I was silenced a lot. Now I'm going to speak up because I was silenced a lot. Now I'm not sacrificing myself anymore because it's not my job to make everybody in the world feel better. And taking some of the stuff that I had told clients about Selfishness is not a bad thing. It's when people take it too far and make it all about themselves. The self-sacrifice does that a lot. You make it all about yourself. And for me, it was like, I refuse to sacrifice myself for everybody else in the room. I deserve to be seen too. I deserve to be heard too. But then when I would speak up, people would say, well, now you're being this way towards me. Now you're talking too loud. So then I'd be like, okay, well, what about this volume? Is this okay? No, now it's your tone. I'd be like, okay, well, what about this? No, now it's your words. Like, okay, let me use some sort of an analogy or a metaphor. Nope, I don't understand that. And where I would just, it just feels like somebody erases you. Where you think like, no, the issue is you just don't want to listen to me tell you anything that might make you feel bad about you. You don't want to reflect on yourself. You want me to take all the blame. I would have people hurt me, and then I'd be like, that hurt my feelings. And then they would pause at that and be like, actually, that hurt me when you said that. So now I think you're against me. And I'd be like, well, what would you rather me do? Just pretend like nothing that you ever do hurts me? That's not reality. Then you would just do whatever you wanted to do all the time as if I'm not here, as if I don't have feelings. You want me to reflect back to you that everything you do is perfect when in fact it's not. But that doesn't mean that everything that you do is wrong either. But a lot of times when people sacrifice themselves, they also sacrifice you with them. Where I had many relationships where I would be like, I will take my part. But that doesn't make me all wrong. That doesn't make me a horrible person. And then feel like I had to defend myself. And that's where I would say, like, okay, in this thing, I was wrong. In this action, I was wrong. But in this and this and this, I wasn't. And I would constantly be in this defensive thing where I'd say, you think I'm a monster? Because I'm telling you that something you did hurt me. Well, I did this and this and this and this and this for you. Remember when I did this and this and this? And then have somebody say, oh, now you're just holding that over my head. That's why you did that. And I'd be like, no, I did that because I love you. And that's who I am. Right now, I'm hurt. That doesn't mean that now I'm a monster. Because I'm hurt. Do you realize that you hurt me? And because they couldn't handle it, they would switch it. And then be like, well, no, I need you to change everything about you, while I change nothing. And I got to this point with work and personal relationships where I would say, it is not my job to sacrifice myself for everybody. I am not going to reject myself for everybody. Like, I know who I am. I keep evolving. I keep learning. I would try to plan for the future because plans help me. But if you're dealing with people who don't want to plan, then there's nothing that you can do. I'd be like, this doesn't make me feel good. The switching and switching and switching and switching. Yeah, I'm good at adjusting and adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. That's my job. But I don't want to come home and not know what's happening, ever. Just be like, well, now we have to change and change and switch and switch and switch and switch. Be like, this keeps me on edge all the time. Living second by second by second by second. I need to know a little bit in advance what's going on so that I can feel safe. And not feel like I have to sacrifice myself all the time. Or be sacrificed because you don't want to sacrifice anything. And that's where I would get in this loop of where I'd be like, I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to rise and be the phoenix and, shine. And, oh, wait, now you're competitive with me? Now, all the good things that I do, you take as slights against you because you're comparing. I'm not as good as you are. I don't shower you with gifts like you do. I don't do the thing that I'd be like, you're not me. I'm not expecting you to be me. But the solution is not that I can't be me at all. And I'd be like, I realize with astrology, my Venus is in Leo. And they say that's where our interpersonal relationships, our intimate relationships lie. And I had looked up and said, oh yes, it says in there, you're loyal. Leos are loyal, sometimes to a fault. When they will love you extraordinarily, extravagantly. They will shower you with gifts. They will tell the world, how much you mean to them. They will and I would say, yes, that's who I am. I'd pay attention. I'm like, oh, you said 6 months ago you wanted something. I heard you. Guess what? I went and researched and I found it. Or, here I want to show you and tell you all the time how much I love you. And the last relationship I had, it became competitive. Where then it was like, well, I can't do that same thing for you. Therefore, I feel like I'm not good enough. I'd be like, so your solution is you don't want me to get you anything. Well, then you don't want me to be a Leo. And then I'd be like, I can't be you. The solution is not, just don't get me anything. And then it would become, well, because you complain because I don't do anything, where I'd be like, no, after I get labeled a certain thing, then I'd say, no, that's not who I am. Right now, yes, right now I'm mad and I'm going to point out something that's bothering me because it keeps happening. But just because I did doesn't doesn't erase everything about me. I did this and this and this and this. And then be labeled as, now you're throwing it back in my face. I feel like I'm describing me. Do you know who I am? Or is this because you don't know who you are? And I had really, like I said, it puzzled me for so long because I would feel like I'm trying to rise. I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to show you who I am. But because you're being competitive with me, you want to sacrifice me when you sacrifice yourself. And now I'm thrown back into the ocean and left there. And then get caught in this just emotionality that just feel like I was chained underwater, drowning. Of waiting for somebody to come by. Somebody pull me out of the water. And then I'd get to that where, okay, I guess I'm by myself. I better figure it out by myself. And then feeling like, okay, I'm like the octopus. I'm still emotional, but I'm going to figure out what's the patterns, what's happening here, what's going on, how can I fix this? And trying to rise above, and then get put into the you're all good or you're all bad. And I think the way that society has made it, and sometimes the way that people have coped, is they get caught in the black and the white. And I would tell people, like, I used to be like that. I used to be in the black and white. And then I realized there's grays all around. Everything is grays. Everything's the in-betweens, of nothing's all good or all bad. It's not that closed-minded or closed, I guess, feelings. The way that we're feeling a lot of times can control our minds. And if we rely on somebody else to get us out of it, then we become so dependent on that person that it gets scary. What if that person disappears? And for me, it would always be like, I feel like I'm disappearing. I feel like I'm doing everything I can to adjust to everybody. And that would end up me sacrificing myself. Me rejecting everything about myself. Being like, I can't be me. I can't speak up because people have a problem hearing the truth. I can't complain because then I get labeled as the problem. I can't ask for help because then we're talking about the way I ask for help. I would tell people this is where I was good at my job, is people could be screaming at me. And I would be like, yeah, I get it. I get it that you want to scream. Go ahead. I can hear you're fearful. I can hear you're exhausted and tired. I can hear the thing behind the thing that people try to hide because they get defensive or they get terrified. And then I can help them through it, even if just for a little bit. And I would have clients that would tell me, thank you. Everybody else just walked on by, or thank you. I don't feel so alone. Because I would say, I haven't been exactly where you are, but I could put myself in your shoes because I know that feeling, and that's empathy. Be like, I know what it's like to be so freaking exhausted of asking for help and you get none. Or people tell you they will, and then whenever you do, they're gone. And so I could put myself in their shoes and be like, I get it. So let's feel that feeling. If you want to talk, we can talk. If not, we can sit here. You're not alone. And then be like a guide of, okay, now we're going to go to this place. And now in this place, if somebody says something, who are they to you? Does it matter what they say? Because maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're being judgmental, whatever. Or being like, yes, that person was mean to you. They were racist. They were whatever. That's why you feel that way. Sometimes being that truth teller, sometimes being that guide, gets exhausting. When you feel like, well, where's that person for me? And the thing that I had realized was that person, I have to be that person for me. And if people don't like it, then I guess they don't like me. I had this fear of rejection so much in my life of thinking, people don't like me because I tell the truth, because I call them out. Because I've spent a lifetime of seeing two-faced people. I've spent a lifetime of hearing people say one thing and doing another. And if you think, should I believe people's words or actions, I would say believe their actions. Actions should back up the words. Where people would say, I love you. And I'm like, really? Then act like it. Because you're acting like you don't even like me. I respect you. Then act like it, because you're acting like you don't even respect me. But I think some people are not aware of how they're acting. I think the world moves fast, and some people get caught in loops and get caught in cycles and get caught in patterns. And maybe their patterns are to avoid. Maybe their patterns are just to ignore. I know for me, with work, I got tired of asking. I got tired of being labeled like she's just complaining. When I'd be like, remember when I wasn't complaining? Remember all the times I didn't? No, you only remember that I keep saying the same thing. I keep saying, this is not working the way that you guys have it set up. It's not working for the people that you want me to help. And then in relationships, I would be the same way, where I would say, I can't be everything for you. I can't be the one to tell you everything to do. I can't be the one to resolve every issue for you. I can't be the critical thinker and the mender and the solution person and everything, because then what happens when something messes up? You blame me. I can't be put into a box in order to protect you from yourself, because it's not my job to do that. It's my job to protect me, to protect me from the worst versions of me. It's my job for me to self-reflect on me, because that's all we can control is ourselves, nobody else. But I'd had so many people in my life that I think sometimes in relationships, if you don't know any different, you just keep repeating the same thing. And then you get surprised when there's a different outcome. I'm the person that would give people 10,000 chances. While people around me were just like, don't you get it yet? I'd be like, oh, but maybe this, but maybe that. That I would just be like, you know what reality is showing me? Reality is showing me who cares, who respects me, who shows up, who's a person of their words. Who can step outside of themselves. Because I can, but I can also stay in my own shoes and think like, it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks about me all the time. Because some people will make you the villain in their story, because they would rather sacrifice you than themselves. They would rather reject you because they're rejecting themselves. And then I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm the villain in a lot of people's stories, because I called BS, because I said stop, because I said no. But I'm also the hero in a lot of people's stories, where they said, hey, if you hadn't come along and told me this, if you hadn't told me to look out for me, if you hadn't told me to love me, I wouldn't have thought to, because I've been labeled by society. I've been labeled by people that I thought loved me. And it's only because of experience that I would say, well, I know how that feels. Sorry that happened to you. But you have to be your biggest fan and stop sacrificing yourself for everybody else. You have to keep some of that for you. You have to start being kind to yourself, liking yourself, loving yourself. You have to be the one to help pull you out of that drowning feeling, and know what portions are you and what portions are the other person. what portions are reality and what portions are just in your mind. You have to be fully aware with eyes wide open, not only to the world, but to yourself. Because if you only focus on everybody else, then you stay in that black and white. And if you only focus on yourself, you stay in the black and white. And both of those things can make you feel either out of control completely or in control completely, instead of the world is gray. Everybody has their own stuff they're going through. Everybody has their own story. So one thing I've learned is to not stay in those black and white feelings, those black and white thinking processes, to not allow anybody else to pull me into theirs. Because then I'd be like, I'm sorry that I'm up here rising and you're down there drowning. But if I come down there to help you drowning, it's not your job to drown me so you can get ahead, so you can rise up. I'm here to help, to advocate, to guide, not to take your place. So I just thought maybe that might help some people. And I'll try to do more visuals, because I think sometimes when we're, a lot of us people that have been silenced, we're just like, oh, I'm trying to describe to you what it feels like. Do you know what that feels like? I'm trying to describe to you how I'm thinking. Do you know what I mean? And if they can't, then they might be like, draw me a picture. So this is how, I've done it. I've surrounded my walls with some stuff I've kept, some stuff I haven't, some stuff I've changed around. But it's kind of like I can look around now and be like, yeah, that's a rising. What's in front of me that I see now is rising pictures and self-identity pictures and more empowering. What's to the left of me is more emotional. What's to the right of me is more the thinking processes, of, I don't know, I guess just reminding me of where I've been and where I'm going, and that I don't have to know everything all the time. I don't have to pull myself to those. So hope you're having a good night, and I'll chat with you later.